So how many of you like the Antique Roadshow? All right, you're gonna like this activity. Anybody knows what this is? This is an old-timey artifact, a water-related artifact. I saw this lady.
Washing your clothes, plunging.
Well, I knew a lady would know because I don't see a lot of men that do laundry. So I find it's good to alienate half the audience when I'm giving a presentation. So you are absolutely right. On here it says a rapid washer. This is an old-timey washing machine. It's called an agitator, and this is what you could use to wash your clothes, your linens, you name it. Very good. I knew a woman would know this. Fellow sister. Okay. I'm going to pass this around. You guys can all look at this, but I'm going to show it to the audience first. What is this old-timey item? What do you think? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I don't know.
How much ice you want? Very good. I'm going to pass it around. Don't keep it, because that costs money. That's like $10 on eBay, so don't sell it. Yes. So that card is an ice card, and what you would do back in the day before electric refrigerators is you would put that in the window, and that's how much ice the ice man would bring. So if you wanted 50 pounds of ice, you would put that in your window with 50 at the top. Okay, one more item. Let's go on this side of the room. This says Atlas Flax Water Bag. What in the world is this? Yes, this guy in the peach.
It would be hung out on the front of the radiator when you were traveling as a desert water bag.
Did everybody hear that? You're exactly right. You can hold that, but again, don't keep it. That's like $20 on eBay. Okay, absolutely, you're right. So back, old-timey cars were very, they would overheat really easily, and so that's what you'd have to put in your car to get it to cool. Interesting enough, that bag is made of flax and other materials, and it's woven in Glasgow, Scotland. And so those bags would sweat, and it would cause evaporation, cool the radiator, like that gentleman said, and it would also provide cool water. So one of the reasons that I wanted to show everybody those old-timey artifacts is that, I feel that my own self, we are becoming a little bit removed from water. Back in the day, if I was washing my clothes, I'd probably have to haul all that water. But nowadays, I turn my water on, it does it by itself. So my washing machine is electric, my dishwasher is automatic, my irrigation is automatic. How many of you have automatic bill payment for your water services? So do you think that removes you a little bit from how much water you're using every month? I think it does. That's not a judgment call, but it's just something with technology. I feel in some ways I am becoming, more and more removed, from water. So the presentation today, this is really to honor the men and women that came before us in our department. We're standing on some pretty big shoulders. And so for the past 100 years, we had people that were very creative, people that were very brave, people that were very ingenious. And it's, again, just really to honor these people. And it'll be interesting to see in the future what our future Water Services Department employees think of the work that we did from 2015 to 2011-15. Now, I hope I'm retired before 2011-15, which will be the bicentennial for the Water Services Department. But I would be fascinated to be a fly on the wall and to hear what they say about us. In water services, I'm going to brag now about people in our department, Craig. There's some really good people that are very good at troubleshooting, planning, problem solving. And we're learning that in addition to providing these core services, we need to connect with our customers. And so this event today is one of those ways to connect with you, our valuable customers. Without you, we wouldn't have a job. So Glendale's history. This is a slide that I took from a former City of Glendale employee. His name is John Akers. He's also a trained historian. He gave a class at Glendale University a number of years ago. And he basically described Glendale's history as having 3 general periods of development. The first is Glendale is really much known as a semi-independent farm town and service center. So remember that phrase, semi-independent, because I'm going to bring it up in a couple more slides, okay? So remember, semi-independent. Like a lot of cities, we went through a lot of growth post-World War II, and then we returned as a regional center, and this really happened within the last 20 years. A lot of development in the western part of our city. So thank you, Thomas. He's in our planning. Wave your hand, Thomas, if you don't mind. Thomas provided me with this slide because I asked Thomas, I said, I need an old-timey map of what Glendale looked like. And he said, oh, I've got something better. I'm going to show you how the city grew over the past century. And so if you look on the map here, the blue and the green is what Glendale, the size of Glendale for like 50 years. It was really, really small. That just surprised me. So it was about 1.5 square miles. We didn't really experience growth then until the late 60s. The 70s is what you see in the yellow. The 80s is in the orange. And then the 90s and 2000s is in the red. Thomas also told me that more homes standing today were built in the 70s than any other decade in Glendale's history. So one of the reasons that I have this slide is to show you that, as our city grew, so did the need for water and wastewater infrastructure. We need treatment plants, we need water reclamation facilities, we need pumps, we need fire hydrants, we need lift stations, we need meters. And so just imagine that you're responsible for providing water and wastewater services to all those residents as the city grows. That's a lot of responsibility. So, how many of you took the tour at Saguaro Ranch today? Good. Okay, so the reason Saguaro Ranch is there is because of the Arizona Canal. That was constructed between 1883 and 1885 by a gentleman named William J. Murphy. Not only was he tasked with financing construction of this canal, but he was also tasked with building the canal. It's amazing to think that this canal was built by people power over 2 years. Can you think of any projects where something 44 miles long could be built in 2 years with our technology today, with our smartphones? I'm telling you, these people back in the day, I give them a lot of credit. Very, very, very sharp people. So the canal brought water from the confluence of the Salt and the Verde rivers all the way to the Northwest Valley. So Arizona, we've got a lot of sunshine, we have a lot of land, we have great temperature, but the ingredient that was missing was water. So the next ingredient that's missing is people. And so Murphy was tasked with bringing people from the East, Midwest, to come out to Glendale and become farmers. So if you ever get stuck on Grand and you're like, oh, I'm at this 6-point intersection, it's because of Murphy. So that's just anytime you get frustrated, don't blame your fellow man, just blame Murphy. So how many of you saw this sculpture as you came to the library today? All right, very cool. So if you haven't seen it, when you walk out of the library today, it's going to be on the north side or it's going to be to your right as you walk out. So this is a sculpture, it's a bronze statue that pays tribute to our irrigation history and our agricultural history. The irrigators, what they did is they took pipes, they would take it from the canals and then they would use the pipe to put water into the agricultural fields. So again, without these hard laborers, we wouldn't really have the city that we have today. Okay, so now we're getting into the good stuff. The first public drinking water system. So I imagine life back in the early 1900s was pretty tough. People didn't have air conditioning, people didn't necessarily have electricity, people didn't even have tap water for crying out loud, and no Starbucks. That gets to me. Like, really, where did people go to get a good cup of coffee? I would have been the first pioneer to have been sent back to the East Coast. I would not have made it here in Glendale. I'm just going to tell you, I wouldn't. I'm not that tough. So, you know, when I earlier talked about Glendale being a semi-independent service and farm town, I can't think of being more semi-independent than starting your own water system. So a guy named John Tuckey just starts the first water system. That's amazing. I tell you, with our technology today, I'd rather have John Tuckey on my side than anybody with a smartphone. I'm telling you. So John constructs the city's first water system. We weren't a city yet. We weren't just a town. The system consisted of a 104-foot deep well and had a 10,000-gallon wooden tank. Just like Leah had on her slides, I copied Leah, by the way, from SRP. You can see on the slides that the people symbol is representing the population, and the water spigot symbol is representing the number of customers. So you'll see that throughout my presentation too. You'll also see a map of Arizona, and that's when I'm showing Glendale's area, okay, in square miles. Everybody following that? Because I may not always point out our population or our customers. So in 1910, a gentleman named Floyd Holmes Sign purchases this early water system from Tucker. And he quickly makes a lot of improvements. He develops another well. He also builds another tank. This time the tank is it's metal, so it's not wood, so that's probably an advancement. And when he sold it to the City of Glendale, there was 160 customers. So I'll show that in the next slide. So what the Sign family did is they tore down the stable that you saw in the other picture, and they built a building called the Sign Building. You can still see that building today. It is actually the headquarters for the Glendale Fire Department. It's a beautiful building. It's open to, I think the first floor is accessible to the public. It's a gorgeous building. It's hard to read the sign on the sign here, but I have to read it to you because it's interesting. So, in addition to getting hardware and cotton growing implements, one could also get a furnished room at the hardware store. Can anybody explain that to me? So that'd be like the equivalent of going to a big box store today and like, oh, I'm gonna take a nap. It's just, yeah, anybody? Who knows why you could get a room? Yes. Okay, did everybody hear that? It sounds like this was a way just for rooms to be leased out to people. Okay, so it didn't necessarily mean if you got tired shopping, you could rent that room. Okay, thank you. Yes? And also another good point. Everybody hear that? Automobiles weren't very prevalent, and so you'd need a place to sleep every once in a while. Thank you, very good. So on February 25th, 1915, the town of Glendale purchased the Waterworks property from the Sign family for $12,000. That's quite a deal. The system had 2 wells, and again, it had a 10,000 gallon elevated tank and a 25,000 gallon elevated steel tank, and 160 customers. This is interesting. A gentleman named H.G. White was the department's first manager, and he made $90 a month. So I think that was really, really good money back in the day. And in line with the pattern that our city water services department has done for the past 100 years, as soon as we bought that system, you know what we did? We fixed it, and it has never stopped since then. I'm sure our management could attest to that. So how many of you, when you hear Glendale Water Services, you think of fire protection? All right, there's some people in here. We do. We definitely work in partnership with our Glendale Fire Department, but we've had a fire protection system in place since 1917. So the picture that you see is a reservoir, and the building is a pump house, and there were 25 fire hydrants built in 1917. So today, Glendale maintains 8,500 fire hydrants throughout the city. And the ISO, which is called the Insurance Service Office, has rated our fire protection as being very high because of our reliable water and reliable pressure. So that's really good for you as residents to have that for your insurance. So I'm gonna ask another question. When I say Glendale Water Services, how many of you think of public health? Excellent, good. You will all be won over by the end of this presentation. I will convince you about public health. So the first water reclamation facility was called a sewage treatment plant, was built in 1918, and that was along Glendale and 99th Avenue, so where that west area development is right now. And they use chemicals and mechanical settling. Today, Glendale operates 2 water reclamation facilities. The Arrowhead Reclamation Plant, which is pictured, that was built in 1986, and the West Area Water Reclamation Facility and Recharge Area was built in 2000. So when I was in college, my first summer home, my parents quickly told me to get a job, and my mom had worked for the City of St. Charles, which is 40 miles west of Chicago, and was able to help me get a job working at the sewage treatment plant. Thanks, Mom. So needless to say, I'm 19 years old. I'm less than thrilled with this job opportunity. I'd rather be hanging out with my friends. But I will tell you, from day one, it was an eye-opening experience. Seeing sewage come in, and then learning the treatment plant, and then seeing clean water get discharged into the Fox River definitely changed my way of thinking about water, thinking about waste. I highly recommend, if anybody gets a chance to tour a water reclamation facility, it's an eye-opening experience, and it really, I think, would give you a lot more appreciation for water. It did for me, at least. So the Roaring 20s. So we're going to be moving through the decades. The 20s, there was a lot of economic development happening in Glendale, even though we were still fairly small. When you hear of the Roaring 20s, I think more of larger metropolitan areas, but even though Glendale had, less than 3,000 people, we could still have a boom. So in 1920, the town, again, was pretty small still, only about a square mile, and we had 687 water customers. This is interesting. In the 20s, the town's water supply was tested by the University of Arizona. And when the analysis was compared to that of several other valley cities, quote, it was found to be the purest water in the state. I'll take that. That sounds great. Also in the 20s, water meters were installed. And also in the 20s, people were still using outhouses. But if you had your house or property adjacent to a sewer line, you couldn't use that outhouse anymore. You had to connect to the city's sewer system. And then also in the 1920s, Glendale installed a 103,000-gallon elevated steel tank, and this provided about 35 pounds of pressure in the water distribution system, and also provided more water for residents. So the 1930s, really a tough time for a lot of Americans, and Glendalians, no exception. What came about in the Depression, I think, which was a good thing, was a lot of young men were trained through the Civilian Conservation Corps and did a lot of really good projects that we can still see throughout the United States today. So one of those projects was in Glendale, and that was paving of the Grand Canal. The city also was able to get some assistance from the federal government. Again, goals were to provide people with jobs, to get us out of the Depression. And so the city was able to get a variety of free grants and low interest loans so that we could make improvements to the water infrastructure. And then on the Colorado River watershed, a big thing to happen, it's just a small dam called Hoover Dam. Anybody familiar with that? Yeah, just a little thing that happened between 1931 and 1936. So the 1940s, Glendale definitely changed quite a bit because of World War II. And locally, that's when Luke Field was built, and also Thunderbird Field. And I was reading a book about Glendale history, and what struck me was that there were so many people coming out to Glendale that, civilians and soldiers military personnel had a hard time finding places to stay. So they would, have to rent rooms from families, and maybe they would get a room at the Sign Hardware. I'm not sure. In 1944, Arizona finally ratifies the Colorado River Compact. And so, as was mentioned by Dr. Maham, the contract was originally signed in 1922. And again, that basically was a rule of the river or law of the river where there's an upper basin and then a lower basin. And so it's basically sharing the Colorado River amongst those different states. Well, in the 1940s, there's a lot of development going on in central Arizona, southern Arizona, and so Arizona leaders knew, someday we're going to need access to this river and this water source into our state. And so it was kind of a concession to accept in drought situations or shortages where we would have less priority on the river. So that's a big thing that happened in the 1940s. So the 50s, post-World War II, a lot of growth again in the valley. I'm going to ask another question for this group because I wasn't able to find this, but what happened to this huge 1 million gallon water tank? Anybody know? This was built at Lions Park. It looks like it may have flown away like a UFO, but this is a huge piece of equipment. The tank was, like I said, a 1 million gallon water tower. The tank was 130 feet tall. So, Thomas, do you know? Something I still need to research. Get those smartphones out. Millennials, get those smartphones out. Yes. It was dismantled? Sold for scrap. Okay. See, this is a good thing that you're here today. I'm learning a lot. Yeah. Okay. So also in the 50s, one of our water treatment plants was built. This is actually called the 91st Avenue Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's a cooperative between the City of Phoenix and Glendale. This plant still exists today, and a lot of the reclaimed water is sent to the the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant and the Tres Rios Restoration Project. So we're not wasting any water. All of that water is getting reused. So Leah, are you still here? Because I think I may have my dates wrong on this slide. Leah just stepped out. Leanne, you might know. So I could have sworn in Leah's presentation, she mentioned that SRP and Glendale signed the Domestic Water Agreement in 1951. Okay, just ignore this slide. What you can pay attention to, though, is that a lot of annexation begins in the 1960s. So the city annexes 4.4 square miles of Maryvale, and the first water quality laboratory opens in 1964. So in this picture, this is the SRP business office. I think this is a great picture, a good snapshot of that era. So the 70s is the housing boom. Glendale constructed its first surface water treatment plant, the Cholla plant, in 1976. So think of that. Before that time, all of our water, potable water supplies, not irrigation water, was coming from groundwater. So I'm going to make you guys be the water manager and for the city now. Is that good just to have one source of water for the city? No, absolutely not. So considering that groundwater is a non-renewable source, and so that's great that that plant was built in the 70s and that treats SRP water. Construction of the Central Arizona Project Canal began in 1973, and so this canal, which you should all be familiar with, is a 336-mile canal that's transporting water up from the Colorado River all the way to the Phoenix metropolitan area and then to Tucson. So the picture that you see, the crushing implement that you see, or it looks like a, you see this right here? Looks like a drill. It's called a mole, and what it did is it just crushed rock. And that's how a tunnel was built through, sorry, I can't forget the name of that. Pardon me? Buckskin Mountain, thank you. I'm like, I knew it was on my slide. So that's a 7-mile tunnel, that's huge. I'm just gonna give you the mic if that's okay. You know, I need this type of support, thank you, this is good. Okay. So the 1980s Groundwater Management Act, you got a really good explanation about this from the CAP presenter, and this is so important. If you live in Arizona, and when we go to schools, we definitely teach kids about this. This is what you should know about living in Arizona. Arizona, sometimes we get knocked, you know, we get knocked down, but this is an example of where the state is really a leader in water resource management. So this picture that you see is actually 2 pictures merged together, and it's Governor Babbitt signing the Groundwater Management Act on June 12, 1980. So there weren't panoramic cameras back then. The Groundwater Management Act is still the strictest water resource law in the nation. And as was mentioned before, there's different active management areas. We're in what's called the Phoenix Active Management Area. And so there's a series of plans to get us to safe yield by 2025. So safe yield means that we're no longer using more groundwater that is going in naturally or being recharged. And so that's really the birth of water conservation programs in the valley. So under that code, water providers are tasked with meeting very stringent water conservation requirements through 2025. So these are some headlines taken from newspapers from our program. So the Glendale Water Conservation Program came about in December 1984. It was approved by our Glendale Council at the time. The program actually didn't start until 1985, however. The first headline you see is from the Arizona Republic, and it says, Glendale plugs conservation to reach water limit by 1986. So in 1985, our gallons per person per day in Glendale was 212. And so we had a target by 1986 to reduce that to 199 gallons per person per day. The second heading, Glendale residents offered water conservation rebates, is about the city being one of the first cities to offer low-flow toilet rebates, actually in the United States, and one of the first valley cities to offer the turf to desert landscaping conversion rebates. So if you're a Glendale resident and you're having problems with your lawn, talk to me after this class. We have a rebate where you can get a financial incentive to remove problematic turf and install a lower water use landscape. So the 1990s, I know Leah talked about this. In our department, we have a meeting every month called the Water Resources Executive Committee, and one of our environmental program managers, who's here today, his name is Drew Swiskowski, really gave us a good lesson on this project. So Roosevelt Dam was expanded in 1996. The dam was raised 77 feet, and this increased the capacity of the reservoir by 20%. Now, the city of Glendale and 5 other cities helped pay for this. And so one of the reasons that we did this is to get extra water. Say we have an El Nino event this winter. We're right now contemplating how much of this water that's in storage now that we want to use, or do we want to just, kind of wait and see? But Drew is doing a really good job of developing a plan so that we're really maximizing our water use from this reservoir. And Craig, our director, at a meeting this week said, water is one of the most precious commodities. It's more precious than gold, than silver, and very true. So that was good for us all to hear. So the 2000s is really the era of continued investment in our infrastructure. The picture on the top, that's what's called the NAUSP, which stands for the New Agua Fria Underground Storage Project. This is an area where CAP water, SRP water, and reclaimed water is recharged into a series of basins. I've gotten to tour this area, and the basins are huge. They're about 20-some acres apiece. And when you're there, it's quite an experience to see this water percolate into the soil, back into the groundwater. In 2007, our Oasis water treatment plant was constructed, and this is a combination surface and groundwater treatment plant. So I'm one of those people that likes infographics, and I used to be ashamed to tell people because I thought there's probably a psychology behind infographics, like can't do math, poor critical thinking, not very good with logic, but I don't care. I like infographics. So this was my attempt to create a water-related infographic, and Craig, our director, talked about some of these items before. Here's a visual to just kind of give you a lowdown of some, not all, of our infrastructure and practices. So we have 4 water treatment plants, 1,000 miles of water mains, 2 water reclamation facilities, 708 miles of sewer mains, 8,500 fire hydrants, 14,000 manholes and cleanouts. Our water quality laboratory and process labs run 50,000 tests a year on your water. The average resident today uses between 120 and 130 gallons per person per day. And the pie chart that you see on the top is our water portfolio. So most of our water is coming from the Salt River Project. Next is Central Arizona Project, and that's at 37%, 13% groundwater, and 7% reclaimed water. The future. One thing that our department does is we teach kids about where our water comes from and why it's important to be good water stewards. The picture you see is kids interacting with a model. It's called the Watershed Model. And this is where kids can learn about the water cycle. They can learn about our water sources. They can learn about conservation. Because if city staff go into a classroom nowadays and say, kids, here are 5 ways to save water, they will fall asleep. So we have to make our program interactive, we have to make it personable, and we have to make it exciting. Kids, 4th graders are a tough crowd, I'm telling you. But if you want to feel like a hero, go into a 4th grade classroom, teach some kids, and you will leave feeling like a rock star. The kids are so hungry for this knowledge, and we make it very localized to Glendale. So they're learning about Glendale water. They're learning about the community that they're living in. We reach about 1,500 students a year through this program. So as far as the future goes for water resources, our future is very bright in Glendale. From a water resource perspective, we want to plan for future capacity. We want to continue to receive credits for effluent produced at our water reclamation facilities. We want to reduce our groundwater. We've done a good job. At one point we were 100% of our water supply was from groundwater. Now we're at 13%. We want to be able to store water underground so that we could use this water in times of drought or during shortage. From a water conservation perspective, people have done a good job. Our residents have done an amazing job over the past 30 years from when the program started. A lot of things have helped as far as energy codes and plumbing codes, which have helped us become more efficient, but it's also behaviors. People have have heard the messages about saving water and have responded. I think one thing in the future that we'll see more of throughout the valley is something called low impact development. The City of Glendale just won an award from the Arizona Forward Association for what's called an LID, or Low Impact Development Toolkit, that was done with the City of Mesa. LID is just a stormwater management method where you're capturing stormwater and rainwater where it's not becoming a problem, it's actually becoming a resource. So as you leave today, you can see an LID practice here at the Glendale Main Library in the Xeriscape Garden. It's at the front entrance. You can see a series of basins and bioswales where we capture stormwater, where we capture rainwater and use that for the plants. We're not shedding it out into the street where it picks up pollutants and becomes a problem. So I think you'll be seeing that more in the future. So as I said earlier, it'll be interesting to hear what people think of us 100 years from now, but I'm definitely very proud to work for the City of Glendale Water Services Department. It's an awesome job, and the future looks bright for Glendale.